FORA.tv. Idea Immersion. Visit us at www.fora.tv.
Sometimes just by luck, and sometimes by, good hard research, I found real live stories of Arabs who saved Jews. I found a story, for example, his photo is on the back of the book, a man named Si Ali Sakat. Si Ali Sakat was the mayor of Tunis at one time. He then retired to a country home in the Zaghouan Valley, which is right where the battle line was in spring of 1943. And at one point in the heat of battle, 60 Jewish escapees from a slave labor camp, knocked on the farm door, knocked on his farm door, looking for refuge. Now you have to remember, at this time, the piece of territory that he lived on had gone back and forth during the war half a dozen times. He had no idea whether this time the Allies would win or the Germans would win. He let them in, all 60, and gave them refuge until the battle was over and the Allies had come through. He's a hero. Or there's a man named Khalid Abdul Wahab. Khalid Abdul Wahab was a notable in the town of Mahdia, in a coastal town in Tunisia. One night, he learned that a German officer was going to rape a beautiful, blonde, blue-eyed Jewish woman. Khalid got to the place where that woman and her family were hiding. They had already been kicked out of their home, which the Germans had taken for barracks. He got to the place where that woman and her family were hiding, knocked on that door, and said, "You have to come with me." And he took all of them, that family and several other families that had sought refuge in this place. It was an olive press factory. And throughout the night, he shuttled them in his own car back and forth to a family estate that he owned 30 kilometers outside the town. And he kept them there for 6 weeks until the Allies expelled the Germans from his town. Now that story was told to me by an amazing woman who was the daughter of the woman in question. She was 11 years old at the time. She grew up 60 years later. She had been trying to tell this story for 60 years and nobody would believe her. She tracked me down on an internet posting. I had internet postings all over the world. Thank God for the internet. Without the internet, this book would have gone nowhere. She tracked me down, and she told me the story with such fervor that I had to take it seriously. And so, she was living in America. I was living in Morocco. I couldn't go and interview her, so I hired a professional Shoah Foundation interviewer in Los Angeles to go and do an interview of her. It produced an 83-page transcript of this woman's life and her experience. And then she died. It was as though the first time someone had taken her seriously, she had told her story and she died. So I had this story. And I had to try to track it down to prove it or disprove it, as the case may be. I showed it to two prominent Tunisian Jewish historians, and they dismissed it out of hand. They both said, German soldiers did not rape Jewish women in Tunisia. Ha. So over the next 2 years, through the help of some remarkable people, mostly women, Tunisian Jewish women in France and in Israel, and two Tunisians in Tunisia. First, I was able to prove that, yes, regrettably, German soldiers did rape Jewish women in Tunisia. And I have stories of that, so much for those historians. And then with their help, I took her testimony and went back to her hometown and knocked on the door of her childhood friends that she hadn't heard of in 60 years. I had her describe for me her entire life when she was a little girl, and she mentioned her friends and her school and everything, and I found her friends. And they confirmed the story, that yes, this man, Khalid, did take her family away and took care of them throughout the end of the war. And then I went to the farm. I found the farm. And it was precisely as this woman had described it. Where the buildings were, where the pool was, what type of trees were on the outside of the main house. So it was true. And that was thrilling. And there were other stories. There was even a fantastic story in the heart of Europe, in the heart of German-occupied, Vichy-controlled Paris, where the most influential Arab of his day, a man named Sikador Ben Kabrit, who was the imam, the rector of the Mosque of Paris, helped to save at least 100 Jews by providing them with certificates of Muslim identity, birth certificates, marriage certificates, so that they could pass as Muslims and thereby evade arrest and deportation. So taken together, these are wonderful stories. They show that in a time of war, Arabs were, as I said, very much like Europeans. Most were indifferent, some were perpetrators, and some were heroes.